Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, crying is all right. It's a very special night tonight. And you'll see when you find out because the feature is. But first, I'd like to do the Williams portion of the evening. As soon as Mr. Strauss is down.
What do you say?
Next to Brendan.
Okay.
Arthur's not here. I was hoping to slander him to his face.
Don't mind the back.
You'll see it in the anthology, hopefully. At last week's workshop, John J. Trouse said that a poem should be a machine. And by that he meant the form should determine what a poem is and what it means. In email afterwards, Arthur Russell brought up a quote by Paul Valéry, who said, "A poem is really a kind of machine for producing the poetic state of mind by means of words." I accused John and Arthur of blasphemy for not quoting Mr. Williams himself, who said that a poem is a machine made of words. Yes. But Arthur had a defense against my accusation. He said that the Valéry quote was more interesting because it doesn't just say that a poem is a machine. It also answers the question, a machine for what? In 1785, Edmund Cartwright invented a machine. A machine for what? A machine for weaving. It was called the power loom, and it started the Industrial Revolution. In 1804, Joseph Marie Jacquard invented a machine. A machine for what? Well, it's a device that you stick on the power loom, and you feed it punch cards. And the punch cards tell the power loom what to weave. In 1833, Charles Babbage designed a machine. A machine for what? Well, it was a machine that would take instructions from punch cards and do whatever those punch cards said to do. So it was a machine for anything. Today we call that kind of machine a computer. But Babbage never built his machine. And in 1939, when Paul Valéry said that a poem was a machine, there were no machines called computers. There were only machines. And these machines were changing everything. They changed how people lived, and in World War I, they changed how people died. Machines were creating new possibilities, but also destroying old ways of doing things. Modernists like Paul Valéry and William Carlos Williams saw that destruction and saw that they wanted to destroy the old ways of writing things and painting things and creating things. And they fell in love with machines, regardless of what they were for. Art movements like Futurism fetishized bicycles, smokestacks, gears, etc. In 1921, Paul Strand wrote an essay called Alfred Stieglitz and a Machine, in which he urged photographers to stop trying to be like painters, to stop trying to hide the fact that their art was created by a machine called a camera. In 1923, the architect Le Corbusier wrote that a house is a machine for living in. In 1934, MoMA had an exhibit called Machine Art, which displayed beakers, springs, propellers, and other machine-made objects. In 1943, Woody Guthrie wrote, "This machine kills fascists," and stuck it on his guitar. And then in 1944, William Carlos Williams chimed in. Oh, there's Arthur. Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Don. Hi, everybody.
There's nothing sentimental about a machine. And a poem is a small or large machine made of words. When I say there's nothing sentimental about a poem, I mean that there can be no part, as in any other machine, that is redundant. Prose may carry a load of ill-defined matters like a ship, but poetry is the machine which drives it. Pruned to a perfect economy. As in all machines, its movement is intrinsic, undulant, a physical more than a literary character. So I would say Mr. Trouse is more in line with Williams than with Valerie. A poem is a machine. A toaster is a machine. But a poem is not a toaster. A poem is an analytical machine. A poem is a computer. A poem for what? A poem is a machine whose purpose is the poem. A poem is a machine for the poem. You might find this unsentimental definition cold and unappealing, but remember that a body is also a machine. A body for what? Remember, a mind is also a machine. A mind for what? A poem for what? That's the question each poem answers differently. So go ahead and design a poem, invent a poem, build a poem, answer that question. Thank you. And Arthur, you missed the part where I gave you some credit, so.
Well, thank you.
So we're going to go on to the feature. Tonight it is my privilege and honor to introduce Jim Klein, the godfather of the wheelbarrow, the champion of poetry in Rutherford, New Jersey, someone most of you know and most of you love. He has been running a weekly poetry workshop in Rutherford for many years. He is the editor of the Rutherford Red Wheelbarrow, and he has a new book out, The Preembroidered Moment, with copies available, $10. But before I bring him up here, Leilani has asked to add her own tribute. So let's bring up Leilani.
First of all, I'll point out the rent receptacle. Also, there are anthologies you can buy for $5 and contribute, and Jim's past books for contribution as well. Okay. We've heard a lot about Jim, our feature. We know a lot, we've read a lot. We interact with him here in the workshop. But maybe there'll be some new revelations for you. The power of birthdays, stars, and numbers. Let's see, let's turn to June 28th. Jim, your birthday reveals you to be idealistic yet pragmatic, an astute and highly intuitive individual with a sharp mind and a natural sense of humor. You have an innate talent for language and communication. What do you think? As a Cancerian, you are both affectionate and impressionable. Your proud, confident, assertive front often hides a sensitive soul. Influence of the mood may cause fluctuating movements. You've strong convictions and a natural ability to quickly assess people, situations, and poetry. I added that. Now let's go to numerology. 28. 8 plus 2 is 10. 0 plus 1 is 1. You are a #1 person. Independent, idealistic, unconventional, yet pragmatic and determined. You are often a law unto yourself. That's a quote. That's interesting. I like that. Kind of fits you. A #1 individual, you are ambitious, direct, and enterprising. What a 28th birthday. With a 28th birthday, you possess clarity and common sense. There is a skeptical and suspicious side to your nature, however. The sub-influence of the 6th month indicates you possess charm and firm convictions. That's it for that book. Now we're going to turn to Chinese astrology. Legend has it that Lord Buddha summoned all the animals to come to him before he departed the earth. Only 12 came to bid him farewell. As a reward, he named a year after each one in the order that the animal arrived. First came the rat, my husband's rat, a good rat. Then the ox, the tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, sheep, monkey, rooster, dog, and bull. Thus, we have the 12 animal signs of today. The animal ruling the year in which you were born exercises a profound influence on your life. As the Chinese say, this is the animal that hides in your heart. Jim, you are a snake. And not just any snake, not a run-of-the-mill snake. You are the gold snake, born in 1941. The snake person is the deepest thinker and enigma of the Chinese cycle. He is endowed with an inborn wisdom of his very own, a mystic in his own right. The snake. Mine is the wisdom of the ages. I hold the key to the mysteries of life. Casting my seeds in fertile ground, I nurture them with constant faith and purpose. My sights are fixed, my gaze unchanging, unyielding, inexorable and deep. I advance with steady, unslackened gait, the solid earth beneath me. I am a snail. And finally, I've written a poem for you, as you know, because I said it. A poet among us. There's a poet among us whose birthday's today, actually it was the 28th. Essential to us all in so many ways. His humor infectious, his writings distinct. He orchestrates red wheelbarrow with aplomb. The teacher within him sets up the pace. William Carlos Red Wheelbarrow, a note of pure grace. Each month new beginning, each year a new arc, poems by the hundreds from poets with heart. As this gentleman shepherds and guides his flock, he maintains a vision with no room for schlock. This poet among us, surely one of a kind, a teacher's persona, those gathered must mind. Follow the rules, but write your own way, says this poet among us whose birthday's today. We'll call him Big Jim, a spirit untamed, a gentle-souled poet who enriches our game. We all got lucky when Jim flew to earth, a poet among us, enriched by his birth. In short, Jim, you're the best. Happy birthday, and thank you.
Thank you, Leilani. Okay, so we're going to remove the podium. Thank you. Okay, before Jim comes up here, he has, with typical generosity of Jim and Zirilli, he's inviting you all to an open house at 160? 165 Jackson Avenue in Rutherford. Corner of Cooper, yes. So let's hear it for the one and only Jim Klein.
It's been working for 2 days, so be sure for 3 days. This is the book that I did in Trinidad, and this is another one to ease the human digestive mind.
Show that picture.
Well, this is to read its sisters.
Yeah.
And this is Lou Chevy's, my first book, so if you contribute to the pot, wrote E.E. Cummings, and he said, pounds, crazy, right? He said, metaphors you like, but do stick to the original for the pre-embroidered moment. Metaphor, but it's not just metaphors, it's meta-war. He puts meta, or play on words. So do stick to the original for the pre-embroidered moment. I was hospitalized against my will, and I didn't know if I was crazy or not. William said, it's easy enough to write. What's hard is to be in a position to write. You understand that? And that's what almost nobody can achieve, It's a lot of work to achieve that, to be in a position to write. But I was given that ability. I had never written any poetry whatsoever. And, the things that work against being able to write is trying to write poetry, trying to imitate somebody, being self-conscious, all kinds of things like that. But, I had been hospitalized against my will, and I was shameless, and so. Pinball machines were crosses split lengthwise. This was a hallucination I had to start with. Pinball machines were crosses split lengthwise. So I looked at the guy at the pinball machine, and I said, he's like suspended from the spar of a cross. All right. Impaled players wriggling on their spars. It was cold. There were 6 in the car. At the hospital, I asked for and received permission to draw on my admissions form. A patient asked me if I was Jesus Christ or Sherlock Holmes. I said both. That's the kind of question that you'll get in some gifted people there. So I think this is my first poem. 2 orderlies, like matched black Judas goats in white, lead 2 deputies holding hands with a woman, and 2 nurses with syringes in a procession to quiet them. So these poor people, they wanted to put this woman in isolation, and they called some deputies to come, and a black girl and a black orderly went first, and I thought, like, they were Judas goats, how ironic. So they went first, and then she was holding hands with these deputies. She thought she was going to a picnic. And these nurses came last, so it was like a military formation, sort of like we're gonna have tomorrow. And I thought, maybe they think I'm crazy, but this is crazy. So I was in a position to write, you see. Just say, Thorazine. Anybody ever have Thorazine? What's the thing? Thorazine. Thorazine is looking for a few good men. Now that the walking ability has left you, try getting back to your room manfully, being laughed at. A nurse tells her boyfriend in your bar, he calls you Easter Bunny. Not walking, do many, many hops on one foot. up the long hallway, hoping at last to lie down on your own bed. That social worker lying down on the next bed, waiting for you. Daddy, once I swallowed a double handful of lithium because my best friend asked me to. He borrowed a fifth of vodka from my landlord and drank it himself. My wife leaned on him. I went into my daughter's room and laid down with her. That smelled me, of course. In her narrow bed, she said, "Daddy," in her sleep. And actually, when she said "Daddy," I knew who I was. Her thin arm was around my neck, and I wondered if all the lithium would kill me, which it can do. So, I'm not going to get too bogged down in that. The slow reading group. In the second grade, I was in the slow reading group. So my mother and I read together in my bed each night. And she hugged me and kissed me and really loved me, longer than necessary. Then I get into the fast reading group. Ronnie, I like his taste in music now. He borrows a dime for the phone. We slap our hands together. He does it out of rhythm, but we do it. I enclose one of his mitts between my hands like a flute in a bun. He bangs my hands with a green tray. Still not enough. We must bump our beer guts together. It's so much fun to be babies. He picks me up off the floor. Okay, Ronnie, now I'm going to pick you up. Necessary to bend my knees to get a hold of this huge man. Surprisingly easy. I have him way off the floor. Hold it a second. This is a good trick. Have to do it when girls are in here. The back door window. Notice I don't have the good ones dipped out because they're all good. So remember that the next time you see an amateur. I'm serious. Locked out on the back porch in the dark. Something compels attention to the forefinger, rhythmic by now. Tap, tap, tapping on the back door window. I just got out of jail and I was locked out of my house. The first impulse is to lengthen the stripe. I'm going like this on the window. Okay? This is really fucked up. I never got to explain this. The first, are you with me?
Yeah.
The first impulse is to lengthen the stripe. With the noisy vibrations, declare this a mistake. The window may be broken by softness. That's my thought. Everything concentrates on making the finger strike softer and softer each time, which is harder and harder really, but the mind hardly comprehends. Finger begins a strange feeling, softer, softer, softer. It was kind of like an erection. My thought was. Even the wind begins giving a little, almost like membrane. I'm so happy that you're here to share this with me, because I never got it. Never had anybody understand that. Softer, softer. There's a buzz, almost a drowse, then a tinkling and ringing on the floor inside. A perfect circle of glass had dropped out and rolled across the floor inside and rolled over and tipped over. We all believe in that. God put a hand. A perfect circle is in the window. For a while I said the perfect circle spins in the window. It doesn't say a perfect circle is in the window. See that? We don't want to be too poetic, right? Burglars could do this. I had a detective tell me, that, getting in the house, they don't want to break glass. And so that was you have these, you have this exceptional mental activity going on, right? So I'm thinking like, oh, burglars could do this. That would solve their problem.
Why are you looking at me?
I reach inside, unlock the door, and enter my own kitchen. In the wrecked cold kitchen, Terry whipped Howie with ease, hands clasped, embrace, talking softly and solicitously as they fought half speed, while Susan and I drank tea and beauty slipped up from the saucer cups. We were like at Walmart or something, watching these guys fight. Raised on the Delta of Venus. Peanut Butter Legs is reading me a story. Erotica fades in and out softly. Dirty words march around the room. Finally, by its own melody, it begins meaning something unmuffled. Beautiful, beautiful, empty wording. And this is a request, the suck. When they extract her with her legs up, she'd be high because she'd be too scared otherwise. And she wonder, will they give her the suck so she can bury it? But she'd be too afraid to ask. They might put her in a crazy place. 220 Montrose Avenue, you can see that on the campus. This thing is in my way. You should go take a look at it. 220 Montrose Avenue. I work as a poet in an attic room of a house, which is a college building. There is a green rug. There is a telephone. There are 4 desks. Mine is empty. If anyone were so reckless as to ask, is there a doctor in the house? On a good day, he might get 7. Sometimes I wonder, this is Rutherford. Maybe William Carlos Williams was once in this house. Maybe he lugged a box of Christmas decorations into this room where I am working. Blizzard. If all this stuff were human flesh, it would put a finish on everything. So many flakes of flesh swirling down are being snowed in like this. Then enter heaven from behind by her brown heart prolonging in heaven, staring into the fire as Daddy comes down outside. The Mahavishnu Orchestra. The carving was crazy, even the music he didn't understand. The Mahavishnu Orchestra played all day. The cops were called. Now this because everything was worked into the current malfeasance and serious measures not taken to get down to the carving on the plywood table handmade by his grandfather in North Dakota, including the name or names required to be incised for negotiations with the Soviets. I actually was carving on the table in my craziness. that was Glasnost. That was when we were getting together with the Soviets. Actually, when I was in Greystone, they have this, all these people are coming and going, you know, for meal time. And I thought, something going on with world peace. I have a peak finish for the book here, where the time I did this and the time I did that. Some of you are familiar with that. I'm not going to read that. The end of the book is just another breakdown, which I thought was clever. My daughter and I thought was clever.
It was kind of a big one. It was kind of a big one.
What?
The breakdown.
So the happy, I finally figured out the happy ending is the book.
Oh.
This is 16 years in chronological order, ending in 86 or something. So it's basically it goes from 70 to 86 or something. So on this day, I was like I really lost it. The singing contest. I was having a hallucination. I thought, like, boy, the radio sounds really funny because everything is off key. You know. To recall the sound of falling urine, rarely heard, which attracted her, who was soon tickled to add her own. The two of us singing like twins. There was nobody else there. The radio of Farrago of musical ineptitude. I mean, not everybody can write like that. The radio of Farrago of musical ineptitude. I'd break the toilet top, I knew. Didn't want to, had to. Sure enough, I did. Not easy. Fortune versus Klein. This guy's actual name was Fortune. And there's an actual lawsuit. They thought that they would solve the Klein problem by telling me I couldn't be on campus. And I got all confused with, like, you know, civil rights, academic freedom. This guy was like in his first week of employ. Fortune versus Klein, are y'all with me? It's an actual legal case. And we came together with our lawyers, and the lawyers were there, and then that left him and he and I by ourselves. And they said, "You guys are going to be all right together?" We said, "Yeah." Maybe I was too hard on the security guard, though he outweighed me 50 pounds. 20 years younger. To avoid holding, if this were football, I blocked him backwards through the breakfasters, knocking back tables and chairs, pushing him back, blocking him backwards, keeping his leg up so he hopped back and back until he fell over backwards on the stage in front of the cafeteria. And I on top and got up his afro in my left hand and would have. The counselor and the head of security, holding a chair, confronted me in the stark form power commands. You ever notice that? The stark form power commands. And so I sat on the stage and gave my savage speech. Only a monster could have pushed it that far. I stole only a mile. I stole that from the local leader. I guess the time I tried to break into a car. The time I tried to break into a car I thought I owned and was hit on the head with a baseball bat by two young guys on neighborhood patrol, which knocked me out and took my wallet and left on top of my neatly folded obnoxious jacket. But the money's still in it and fell into the warm hands of the police. The time I psychoanalyzed married couples working in all-night restaurants on napkins by the agency of the numbers and letters on the jukebox, and was given free food, which I call the lasting order. They actually take care of you if you're crazy. I had a guy in Passaic in a pizza place gave me free pizza. The time I sat all day in a car showroom trying to prove mathematically that the Datsun 280Z was the best sports car in the world. The time I ran away with the girl, and she was so excited she bumped her head inside the door frame of the car. And it was serious enough in a motel room with the ceiling besmeared with our own fast food. The time I woke up naked, this is when John Lennon died. The time I woke up naked with my arms around the chimney, yelling like a wild Indian, and my son was cheering me on. And the red lights of police cars moved in like fireflies below. The time I was rearranging furniture at the office and didn't have time to finish before a PTA meeting. The time I couldn't stay in the attic because I might smoke and burn the house down, and talk to a psychologist for 2 hours in a secret room at St. Mary's who wouldn't admit it. The next day, standing by the guard from Tennessee until I got so tired I went into the secret room and they slammed the door shut and locked it and hurled my cheap watch at the wall, and they put me on a stretcher put me in a straitjacket on a stretcher, frightened me, and I didn't want them to see. The first time when I didn't know what was happening, so it was the worst. The time I held my infant daughter and described sine waves with my head in a modern chair, and ate a dozen hot dogs knowing I was getting better because I could eat, being laughed at. The time I threw golf bags and boots into my Pinto wagon and got lost, and asked directions at State Police Headquarters who were looking for me, and ended up driving mountain roads at night, asking God for directions in German, finding more and more German inside as I drove. Who's so fighter?
Jim says all the poems are good, so buy a copy and read the ones you're going to read tonight. We're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to go into the open reading. So stick around. Thanks, everybody.